4 of the NFL season. We're going to be talking through today's slate with Sheets, and I'm going to guess that Rhodey's going to pop in just any second here. So
any second now.
Yeah, so it's it's a fun week. As we talked about throughout the week, I had a very condensed way I was doing things, and I'm gonna probably be changing that up a little bit, which we'll talk about on the show a little bit. Sheets, what are sort of some overall takes that you have or overall thoughts that you have on this week? And we'll start jumping into position by position and all that stuff in a little bit. But any sort of overall takes, because we're going to have some weird value at quarterback. We've got some weird value at running back. And are we going to be overweight on this? Are we going to be underweight on this? What are you thinking?
Without getting into like the actual stuff, I mean, when you have a 4K quarterback with two receivers that people were going to play anyway, it's it further puts pretty high importance on that game. Not to mention the Chargers on the other side of it. So the Buffalo Miami thing, like you said, and the from earlier in the week and the Chargers, whatever. I think it's the two of those are going to garner quite a bit of the love, which probably they should. And in Millie Maker stuff, you have to try to figure out how to get different, I guess. But remember last week, everybody tried to get different. Watch the chalk just smash. So that's my overall take from this week. I'm curious to just go through the normal process of everybody going through their games and whatever.
That sounds good. Yeah, me too. I'm looking forward to getting into it. Rhodey, how you doing today, man?
Doing good, man. How you guys doing?
Doing pretty good. Just trying to sift through all this stuff. What we want to do, with the chalky and we say quarterback. There's a cheap quarterback. Now there's cheap quarterbacks that you can play with very skinny stacks. That especially, I'll tell you right now, the Cleveland. He's a UCLA kid, so I'm pretty familiar with him. The kid who's going to start today for Cleveland. And I actually think that might be the better use. It's a worse game environment. Obviously, you have the other situation, but. Man, we'll get into it because I think that Thompson Robinson has a lot more upside than O'Donnell does, but you just don't have the receivers to pair him with, which maybe is a good thing. Maybe you just play these guys and stack up the expensive receivers because there's lots of good expensive receivers across the board. Rhodey, do you have any overall thoughts on the things before we get into? We'll start talking about quarterbacks, which will lead us into eventually we'll get into game stacks, but we'll start off with quarterbacks.
Yeah.
But before we do that, you want to mention anything?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really got much. I mean, this is a lot of news still breaking still now too with a bunch of new stuff here. So I'm kind of switching around some builds I already had, and we're going to see how the projections update a little bit as we go through the show and see what your guys' thoughts on like that kid you're talking about, see how he looks. I've heard good things about him. He's getting hyped up a little bit. So maybe that game will look a little bit better to me as we talk through the show here.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, he was a fifth-year senior, the kid from Cleveland, and we'll get into it for quarterbacks. What I've got, my original plan was I was going to play 4 or 5 quarterbacks, period. That was it. And then it was going to be very heavily focused on Tua and Josh Allen. Now, they are still my highest-owned quarterbacks by a pretty good ways. But I have, because of this value, and I'm going to go to Sheets and then Rhodey after that on this, because of the value with O'Connell in a game environment that we obviously like. And then because the Thompson Robinson price, I think you can just play skinny, like those guys with one receiver and still stack up that for me, for the Miami Buffalo game. You could even play the Thompson Robinson and still stack up the Chargers and Raiders, which will be a very unusual build. But I'm into those. And then I've gotten much more when I started looking into it. I think the game with the most plays projected by, I think 5 or 6 plays, it's a pretty good ways, is the Rams and Indy. So I'm getting a little more exposure to that game than I thought, but it's mainly going to be Tua and Allen for me. Herbert is number 3. Number 4 is O'Donnell / Thompson Robinson. And then Josh Fields is my other one. And I have 1 or 2 Joe Burrow stacks out there. So that's the way I'm doing it, but it's still pretty heavy focused on the Miami Buffalo for me. How about you, Sheets? And then we'll get into Rhodey.
I have a question before we kind of get going. What do you think O'Connell's ownership is going to be in the Millie Maker?
Well, I think so I'm curious. That's the thing that's really hard to gauge. I think it's going to be pretty high, would be my guess. I would bet you if he's not the most popular quarterback, I would bet you he's in the top 3 or 4. I really do.
Yeah. So the answer to that is going to really drive what I end up doing. Because the ownership projections that I have are just way too low on him. And as a result, I'm getting way too much of him, I think. Like, I'm currently running my builds with a projected ownership of 8%. And it just has to be higher.
I actually think 8% would put him that might put him number one. There's no, I don't have it. I mean, 'cause none of the other quarterbacks are going to be, you're not looking at guys who are going to be 15% owned at quarterback today.
That's true. That's definitely true. But just to go with what I have now, which just so you guys know, I'm going to run stuff after this because I've not run anything with Watson out yet. I didn't put new projections up with Watson out. That's the last thing I did was run projections, and then I found that Watson was out. But right now, if I'm just going to list it by what do the actual quarterbacks, O'Connell. I have 35% of him in the Millie Maker. And then the only guys I have over 10% above that are Justin Herbert at 20 and then Josh Allen at 12. And everybody else is just spread.
Yep.
So right now it's O'Connell with garnering just an overwhelming amount of the ownership.
Now, because of the news to Watson, do you maybe want to rerun something and see?
I'm going to. That's the whole thing.
Yeah. See if you want to get some of the Robinson. I just think that could end up being a play. And the one thing that's great about that guy is he does have wheels and he will run.
O'Connell's definitely a pure stand in the pocket passer.
Yeah, and I just want to say I would not be at all surprised if O'Connell does not play the second half or something. I mean, if they're down like 26-0 or something, or 28-0 or whatever you want to make the score be, I do think Brian Hoyer comes in at some point. They'll have to be somewhat competitive, I think, for O'Donnell to stay in there. That's just my take. I don't see why. I actually don't know why Brian Hoyer isn't starting this game. It almost feels like a tanking thing to me. So it worries me a little bit. Rody, what are you doing at quarterback?
Yeah, I played a lot of these cheap guys last week, and now everyone's wanting to go to these cheap guys this week. So I've been kind of wanting to go with these higher quarterbacks this week. So yeah, I mean, I like Herbert a lot this week, and if it brings down his ownership, that's fine. I'm not as much on the Josh Allen. He's a little priced up. Maybe on FanDuel a little bit more. Matthew Stafford, that Indy Rams game, Anthony Richardson, I like those two quarterbacks a lot in that game. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to target those a little bit. And I got some Tua going and a little bit too. So I really like that game a lot too. So those are kind of, and then I'm throwing in some of the cheaper quarterbacks, just sprinkling them in some other lineups. So that's kind of what I'm doing.
Yeah. And it's funny because football's funny because you go through this whole week with the plan, and I was looking at my owner, like literally I was going to have 40% of Tua and 40% of Josh Allen going into the week. And now I'm just sort of like, I'm still spreading out a little bit, but I'm looking at my exposures, and it looks like I still have a very healthy 20+% of. I have 29% Allen, 21% Tua, so I'm still pretty heavy on that one personally. All right, this is a weird one at running back, and it really depends on lineup construction. Okay, because we can talk through a lot of things. I'll just go first and talk about my exposures. I don't have any running back currently above 26% ownership for me. And I'm spread out a little bit, and I'm using a little bit of Khalil Herbert because I have that game a little bit tagged, and he's 4,700, and he's still the RB1. It's obviously not ideal, but 4,700 against Denver is kind of hard to ignore after they just gave up 9 million yards and 8 touchdowns rushing last week. And the 8 touchdowns part is not an exaggeration. Javonte Williams, who I mentioned as I predicted to be on the other side of that game, he was my millionaire prediction winner for this week. I do love Javonte Williams. I think he's going to have some ownership as well. Mostert, Williams, and Herbert are my 3 highest owned, right with James Cook. Just beneath them, I have Tony Pollard, Kyron Williams, Josh Jacobs, Josh Kelly. I am going to play I can never pronounce his name right. I am going to go back to that a little bit just because I think that he showed enough to obviously warrant a lot more touches, which may take away a little bit from Mostert. I also like Madison, Swift, and then a little bit with my Burrow stacks. I have some Derrick Henry. I'm lower on Sanders than everyone else is. We'll see if he plays or not. If not, I have no problem using Chuba Hubbard. And then a little bit of Moss and Kamara, but mostly it's going to be focused on the 15% plus guys are the Kelly, Jacobs, Williams, Pollard, Cook, the other Williams, Mostert, and Herbert. How about you, Sheets, at running back?
Well, again, with the caution that I have to rerun stuff and might not end up being what I end up doing at the end. Right now, I have just an overwhelmingly uncomfortable amount of Kyron Williams. I have about, right now, even in the Millie Maker, like 60% of him right now. That's one way to get over the field on a pretty chalky running back.
Yeah.
At least. I have him 20-25% owned here. But I'm getting even more of him. So that's where I'm at. And then underneath that, the only guys I have, well, I have a couple guys over 10%, but guys over 15 I have, I guess, are Josh Jacobs coming from that game. And right now, the aforementioned Miles Sanders, and that's just probably something I don't end up doing, if you want to know the truth. That might be one I just kind of moved down a little bit.
Yep. How about you, Rody, running backs?
Yeah, I mean, you guys said a lot of the good ones. Like I like a lot of them. I have a lot of Williams as much as Sheets. We'll see where we end up on that. Kamara's back this week too. I'm getting a little bit of him. I kind of like him for some reason. I don't know why. I talked that Saints Bucks game in the DFS pick show this week. Kind of getting a little bit of pieces in that game. I kind of like it. I'm just kind of going with that. A couple other things about those cheap quarterbacks. You got Ford for Browns. You got Kareem Hunt there. We don't know what his workload's going to be like, so they could just run the ball a lot in that game as well. Same with the Raiders. I like Josh Jacobs a little bit as well. Getting a little bit of him in that game. So, maybe the quarterbacks don't get there and the running games do a little bit. So I kind of like that, a little bit of leverage off them. But some of those guys are still going to be a little bit owned there too. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is interesting because what's weird is I didn't, even with the cheap quarterbacks, because I like the receivers, and we'll get into that in a second. I noticed that I just didn't get to guys. I'll save them for the afternoon slate, the McCaffreys. I still have a lot of Pollard, but I wanted to play more McCaffrey, more some of these guys coming into the week a little bit more, take a shot with the Derrick Henry and all that. But I just like receiver a little bit too much to not want to spend my funds there. So I'm just going to go through it. I'm heavier on Diggs than I am any other receiver by a pretty good amount. Gabe Davis is my second highest owned receiver. My third highest owned is Jalen Waddle, followed by Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen, actually, I think I have the most amount of tournament buy-ins along with Diggs. Just in terms of actual ownership, I have him fourth. Tyreek Hill, all these guys are above 25% for me. Devontae Adams. I'm playing some of these fringy cheap ones too. I have the Josh Palmer and the Quentin Johnston, which I don't think is that fringy. But I do think Tyler Boyd is in a really good spot for a pass funnel defense for when they have Burrow getting rid of the ball quickly. You might see him get heavily targeted again like he was last week. And I think they have a better chance to score more points in this one. So I do like Tyler Boyd quite a bit as a spend out. I like Braxton Berrios. I'm going to use some of him in my Miami stacks. He's one of the cheap guys. I'm also using a little bit of Hasty. That's like 3%. But Hardy. Just because I want to get like more exposure to even the cheap stuff in that game. I also have Jacoby Myers at 20%, Jamar Chase at 15%, Michael Pittman at 10%, T. Higgins at 10%, Nakua at 10%. But the main guys for me are the Miami Chargers and Buffalo, and I'll be well overweight on all those guys. How about you, Sheets?
Yeah, I have just a billion percent of Keenan Allen right now. Again, one way to get over on the highest owned receiver is to just get all of it, pretty much. So that's what I have right now. I mean, it's kind of almost embarrassing to say how much I have right now. Like 74%, like Keenan Allen.
All right,
in the Millie Maker. So, needless to say, between all that O'Connell and all that Keenan Allen and all that Kyrie Williams, I am not going to be winning any money for like a long time today. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Because all those guys are from the 4 p.m.s. But what that also means, by the way, is that if Buffalo, Miami just go freaking ballistic, then I can just, then I can do other stuff,
right.
In later games. I could go to like Debo and like some some more San Fran, more Cowboys or whatever. Which I don't mind actually. And we'll get to stacks, I guess, but I don't actually mind those types of blowout stacks like the Cowboys today and the Niners too. I think that those can be very low owned with and maybe deliver here. Anyway,
I like everything you said until you lost me at Cowboys blowout. I'm not so sure about the Cowboys blowout today, but I do like the idea of the Niners being a blowout.
Keenan Allen, and then just kind of an uncomfortable, Adam Thielen. He's just so freaking cheap. I don't know. But I like that. Joshua Palmer again, Diggs, pretty much the guys you said. Well, three guys I'll give you. Actually, I'll throw 4 more in. Cortland Sutton I know people are going to be playing that Chicago game, and I hear a lot of like run backs with the running back from Denver, which certainly makes sense. But I like Cortland Sutton. I'm going to go back to the George Pickens thing that I had earlier this week. He's still showing up as a decent play, and then the cheapo from the Colts, the Josh Downs. Then I do have 20% of DeAndre Hopkins. That's interesting, I guess. So
I like the Hopkins play too. I think that's the range. That there is a weird 5K range that could actually, come close to equating the value at the very top, and that's the other way of building. That's the Pickens, like you mentioned, Hopkins. I would throw Michael Thomas into the mix, who Rody mentioned on our other show. Those kind of guys. It's a different type of build, but it's actually one that I think you can feel pretty good about because there is certainly a ceiling for those guys. Rody, what do you have at wide receiver?
Well, I really there for a minute there. I thought I was going to have a lot of guys to mention, and then she just started rattling off all those great plays. So,
sorry.
No, Josh Downs, all those 5Ks, a little bit of Hopkins. I'm getting to more now. No Treylon Burks there. I do like Michael Pittman. I think one you didn't mention was Zay Flowers at 5'6", right there, kind of low owned. George Pickens, the 5'4" range there. I like, Michael Thomas, 5'2". I like that. The Adam Thielen's pretty cheap as well. So I really like a lot of those guys. I like Quentin Johnson, just as much as Palmer. I think there's not much of a projection difference there, and I think that Johnston's giving you the lower ownership today. It might be different as the game it locks, but we'll see. But yeah, I really like that. I like that range. I think Jacoby Myers at 5'5" is in that same range in that game. I know we'll see how the passing game works out there, but he's been getting a lot of work. But now we got a new quarterback there, so we don't know what we're expecting there. But I liked him at the 5'5" range. So yeah, I really like that range. And then maybe I do like a little bit more Puka in that Rams Colts game. I don't know if you guys said that game, but I like that game a little bit today too. So.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. All right, I'm gonna start it off with the tight ends. For me, the highest owned I have are very similar. I don't care that it was a down week and they scored 1 million points last week. I will take shots on Durham Smythe I'm trying to play cheap tight ends, and there just aren't that many of them. Freiermuth is my number one ownership. Other than that, I'm going to play Smythe and Knox and Kincaid because I just want to play. I just am spending down here a little bit of Zach Ertz. But I am trying to force in a few builds. A little bit of Logan Thomas. I am trying to force in George Kittle, and I'm trying to force in Mark Andrews just as a price thing. They're just too cheap for the upside. So Kittle and Andrews are two that I have notes to get more of, as well as Goddard. Because right now I'm spending down on guys I feel very fringy about, but they're in the game I like. I just think I'd rather take a shot. And I do think that Kittle, this is the game where even if Debo plays, which I think he will, I think they're going to look for Kittle a little bit more. You think that Arizona team has always been bad against the middle. If Debo is even a little bit hobbled, nobody sees more of a boost when Debo's out than Kittle does. I believe he averages about 27 fantasy points per game without Debo since they've been on the same team. So. Just wanted to mention that. All right, Sheets, how about you at tight end?
Well, let's let Rody come. I don't want him to, be left.
Okay, Rody go next. And I would like to do it because I like to have Rody close it out with the.
Well, we're doing defenses. Don't worry.
Yeah. We're moving fast today. You guys are flying.
No, we're moving. No, and then we got to give our terrible plays. We got to give all
terrible plays. Yeah,
all kinds of stuff to do. Yeah.
No, I can do tight end. I follow along with it. Tanner Hudson, a guy 2,500, another cheap one. I know that wasn't listed there, so he's for the Bengals that you could play. I know Harrison Bryant was coming in with Njoku maybe being out, but Njoku is playing, so he's not the $2,500 guy. We got Kylan Granson, that Colts game. I'm not getting a lot of it, but he's another 3K cheap guy we can get. Kincaid at 3.2, Knox at 3.1. One of those guys. I feel like we like that Bills game a little bit. One of those guys get there. Chick at 3.1. No Treylon Burks today. Hopkins getting some love, but Chick should get some more pass catching. Hopefully. Pratt Freiermuth, obviously, really chalky. I think that's probably one you want to get off of as much, but he's still good, but I think he's just too owned. And then Goddard at 4.4, I really like today. He's dropping price. I think he's a lead tight end in that offense. There's a lot of mouths to feed over there, but I think he's a couple touchdowns away from having a big game. So, or a touchdown at least.
Yeah, I like the Goddard idea, and it just the problem I have with the Eagles is just I go through it and I like all of the plays. Like if somebody recommended AJ Brown or Devontae Smith, I'd be like, yes, I like that play. But the problem is like you can't go to everybody. You know what I mean? Anyway, go ahead, Sheets.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I'm pretty sure you guys mentioned everybody, but in case you didn't, just looking, if you guys didn't, I mean, just because these are the high owned guys for me, I'm sure you guys mentioned Everett at some point in that conversation, but I have him as my second highest owned. Knox first, then Everett, then pretty much all the guys you said. If you guys didn't mention Hawkinson, I have him pretty high. And just one other dude, because I just mentioned that Dallas thing, Hunter Henry for New England. I think anybody who's like really chalky at tight end this week should be faded. So if you're telling me that Freiermuth is chalky, I think coming in under on him is pretty is something you can do.
Yeah, and he is going to be pretty chalky for what it's worth. I do think he's a good play, but I hear what you're saying. All right, let's talk about defenses. I have to adjust some defenses. I'm definitely going to try to get more of the Browns. I'm sorry, of the Ravens now that we have no Deshaun Watson. Right now, I have the Panthers as my highest owned, and I actually feel pretty good about it at 2,500. I'm always trying to spend down on defense, obviously. I have the Panthers, Chargers as my favorites, and I just ended up, because I needed the extra money, with a good amount of the Cardinals. And I don't feel great about it, but I don't feel terrible about it either. I don't think it's automatic that San Francisco doesn't run a style that it's all that risky, and they probably won't have to today. But you never know. Arizona gets off to an early lead, one bad pick, one bad back throwing off his back foot by Purdy, and who learned from Garoppolo seemingly to do that. So I could see that happening. So those are the only ones that I have above 10%. But then, like I said, I want to get to more of the Ravens. I want to get to more of the Vikings, and I want to try. Like, I think the Eagles are an amazing play, but I just think it's so crazy to spend $4,700 on a defense. I can't quite do it. But I'm trying to see if I can find some builds that feel comfortable where I can play them. That's what I've got. We'll go to you, Rody. I'm sorry, we'll go to you, Sheets, and then we'll go to Rody because no, we got other stuff.
I can go if you want. Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah, I mean, I like the same defense as you do, so maybe Sheets has got some lower owned sleeper plays we got coming up. But I mean, the Panthers are the one that I'm on the most. The Browns, I'm getting a little bit at 2,800. I am dipping down to a few of the cheap ones as well. I have a Cardinals one, but I did get a couple like Commanders even against the Eagles and Raiders one, just like couple one-offs in there. I played all four of those cheap ones. A little bit of the Bears too against Denver. They have not very great, so I threw them in there. So I'm basically that 2,800 and under, just kind of mix and match in all of them a little bit. And then my spend up ones, 3-2 of the Ravens. I did get a couple of those just recently in some builds, so I do like that at 3-2 on DK. And then that's kind of where the top for me is going. So,
yep. How about you, Sheets?
Yeah. So the first week of the season, I gave my speech about how you're not supposed to play the chalky defenses and that you should come in under on the Commanders, and the Commanders were in the winning lineup. Last week, I came in saying that you shouldn't go more than 20% of a chalky defense, so you shouldn't go over on the Bills. And Bobby interchimed and said, I know, Sheets, that you say you're supposed to do that, but on this particular occasion, I just think the Bills are just kind of a lock and you should go in over on them. And they were in like every winning lineup. So what the hell do I know? So the defense that fits that to this week is probably Cleveland. Cleveland is rates to be the chalkiest. They rate to be the one that I get to the most, which further emphasize that they're probably going to be the chalkiest. So I would not get more than, say, 15% of the Browns if that's the case. You touched on some of the others, except for one. So you touched on the Panthers, who I have, the Bears, but the guys I have right now who's second highest owned of the Browns are the Saints. So I will throw that into the mix against everybody's favorite Baker Mayfield.
Oh, I love it. Look, if you could tell me if they were like cheaper, you would only hear me. I'd be like, you know what? We just lock in Carolina against what's his name? Cousins, and then we lock in them the Saints if they were just a little bit cheaper against Baker, and I would have been happy. Although Baker, for a brief moment, had the record of any quarterback with the longest time without throwing a pick, and right when they announced it, he threw a pick.
It's brutal when that happens, isn't it?
I feel like it always happens. I feel like every time they say it always happens.
Yeah.
All right, so we talked about all the plays of these positions and everything. I'll just remind you.
I have a couple of things before we go on. I I do want to talk, since we do have time, I do want to talk about FanDuel specifically.
Oh yeah.
And see if there's any differences. And the one guy I wanted to mention was actually, well, the guy that Rhodey mentioned at tight ends on DK, and that's the Tanner Hudson. I mean, he's the minimum on FanDuel also. So sometimes, like, you guys got to get guys at 25, 2,600 on DraftKings that are just not maybe like, you know, a little bit more expensive on FanDuel or whatever, but it's very rare, whatever. You get the Stone Min on FanDuel. So I'll throw that in there.
I actually think, though, but on that point, just real quick, don't you think it's so much more valuable on DraftKings than it is on FanDuel? Because on FanDuel, it's only a $300 price difference between he and Kincaid, where on DraftKings, it's a $700 price difference in a more tight formula.
That's fair enough. The couple of differences I have over there are, first of all, in my overall stacks, I'm getting more of the aforementioned Cowboys over there than anything else. And interestingly, we didn't even mention Tony Pollard. I don't think we talked about running backs.
I did.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, I got him like 20%.
And this is actually kind of weird. Hold on a second. Well, I'll tell you, my brain must be so fried. Did we even go over running backs?
Yeah, we did.
We did, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was really quick. I don't think we even talked. I missed a few too. I might give a couple takes at the end. I missed a few that I missed.
Yeah, I don't remember saying a single running back.
You said you have it.
Oh no, that's right. That's right. Kyren. That's why that's so much of him.
Yeah.
So FanDuel, I'm getting a lot more of the Cowboys than I was over there. So I figured I would just mention that.
All right. No, let's talk about it. Let's talk about this. So just wanted to talk about game stacks. Number one, I still have Miami Buffalo. Whether or not I use the quarterbacks, even I'm still playing a ton of hell out of that game. Number two, I now have it's still the Chargers, but like I'm a little concerned about that game getting out of hand. Then I remind myself it's the Chargers. No matter what, they'll find some way to keep it close. No matter what.
Yes, that's what we need to talk about, Bob.
Yeah, that's then I have the Rams, Indy, and then I have Denver, Chicago. But I think I actually have more pieces from Denver, Chicago because I like both the running backs in that game. So those are my four main games that I'm focusing on today, with a little bit of Cincinnati passing love. How about you, Rhodey?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like the Chargers game the most. Probably, I think it's going to be more competitive just because the Chargers do like to blow games all the time, let teams hang around. They do stupid stuff, and the other team's right in the game. I do like that Indy Rams game a lot in the dome there. I think that's going to be a good one. And another one I'm getting to a lot is the Pitt and Houston game as well. So I really like that game a lot. They're playing faster pace. I know it's a lower total, but I think that game's going to go over. So
I like the over bet on that, and I agree with you. And I did want to mention, like, it is kind of, we usually talk about this when we get cheap quarterbacks. It's interesting that you have such a like why isn't Pickett a great pivot off of these other quarterbacks who may only play a half? You know what I mean? Pickett in that game, I feel like is a really, really solid play. I actually don't mind the other side either with Stroud. But
yeah, I was getting a lot of Pickett yesterday, actually, before these new cheaper quarterbacks came about. So
I might have to do just one little, hey, you know what? I kind of agree with Rhodey. I think I'm going to stack up one or two pieces of that game. Sheets, what do you got for stacks?
Yeah, nothing fancy. I mean, Chargers, Raiders, Bills. And then like 8%, 10%ers of like nonsense, not even nonsense. I mean, these are teams I really want to play earlier in the week, but it's kind of hard to fade that Charger game, in my opinion. It's just difficult. Again, it's football. Like you said, it's not like I'm playing baseball, right? And anything's possible. But I don't know. I got really nothing aside from what I mentioned.
Yeah. Okay. I did want to mention on FanDuel that the difference I noticed was that just the tight end pricing. I think that FanDuel always begs me to try and play two tight ends because you can get the 4,800. Sheets mentioned the minimum cost. Dalton Kincaid is 4,800, which is basically the minimum. So the exact minimum doesn't matter as much, but I do think that you can get like some real values in, and I mean, I've got the Diggs Hill lineups with like no sweat over there, even with Josh Allen at quarterback. Like, it's just not that hard to do. I also think that using a little bit of the Achane, however we want to pronounce it, the guy who's had the biggest fantasy game of the year by any player, At 6,400, that was one that kind of stood out to me, and I do think they're going to continue to give him looks. So that's where I'm at on FanDuel. I just wanted to throw that in there, and we'll get to Rhodey's least favorite segment. We'll do a bold takes, and then we get out of here. I'm going to stick with that. There's at least 3 players from Buffalo, Miami in the millionaire winner. That's my bold call, along with Javonte Williams in the millionaire winner. So there's 4 players for the millionaire winner. And of course I'm going to be wrong, but if I'm right, I'm certainly going to have a lot of chances because I've got that all over the place. Sheets, any bold call for you this week?
My bold call is that what the hell is Sabersim not updating the Deshaun Watson, Dorian Thompson projection? That's
Come on, Sabersim, get it together.
give me a freaking break. That's his name, Dorian Thompson Robinson, right?
Yep.
They still haven't projected with 0. They have everybody projected from Cleveland at 0.
Yeah, I keep refreshing as well. I'm not getting it either.
But you got obviously plenty of time. Okay, so this is not going to be like the hottest take in the world, I guess, but I'm gonna hedge a little bit. I think that one of the blowout stacks is going to be in the winner, whether that be San Francisco, and I consider it Dallas, or San Francisco, or like Philly or something like that. It's not going to be one of those games that rates to be that competitive. It's going to be one just big blowout stack. So that's going to be my semi.
Which one did you say it was?
So like one of those either like let's call it like say San Francisco, like some like big spread game that people are, there's no run back, there's no anything. It's like not fancy. You just like there's just like so much better. They put up too many points. I was hoping. I mean, obviously everybody's hoping this. I wasn't hoping this, but if Samuel were out, then like Kittle and Ayuk could freaking go kind of ballistic on that team. I think.
And maybe Juwan Jennings as well. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good ownership on the Chargers Raiders. I think it's good chalk. I really do. So not too much bold stuff for me this week.
All right, Rhodey, and then you can take us out of here. We're running the lecture a little bit early. We could keep talking about some stuff. It's kind of spent.
Yeah, I mean, I can give my bold take, and if you guys want to go over anything else,
say your bold take. Let's do it.
Mine might be a little different than what you want to hear, but I'm kind of going with what Sheets has said. With maybe one of these blowout games are kind of the one in the Millie lineup, and that's kind of my thought too. Is this Buffalo Miami game that's close spread, high total? Maybe that goes a little bit on the underside, and that's not in the winning. That's not in the winning Millie Maker lineup either, or it's spread around a little bit. So that's kind of my bold take. I'm a little lighter in that game today.
Yeah. By the way, in fairness, Roto Grinders doesn't have the quarterback either for Cleveland.
Yeah, I was noticing that nobody seems to have updated. So it's I guess
really.
It's just a little bit slow today for some reason. They're to do this. All right. I wanted to. I kind of like the idea of what you guys are saying because I think there's a natural thing for a lot of us who have played DFS for a while that we always want the games that are high and tight, and people don't love to play. They really hate playing the blowout situations. But when you think about with that San Francisco thing, you could play a cheap Purdy with 2 receivers or not, or you could skip Purdy and play. I just think maybe you guys are right. Maybe getting a little more exposure to some of those games is a good idea. I don't know. I'm just sort of trying to rethink it. The one thing I'd point out though is that the Chargers are turning into that. By the way, what's the spread in that game now? It's like
7.
Honestly, it feels like a game we should be. It feels like the Chargers should win by 30, but that means that it'll be a 3-point game for sure.
I mean, keep something in mind. The Raiders do have some skill guys, and Bosa is out for the Chargers, and the other guys out for the Chargers. So I think that if O'Connell is reasonably confident, I mean, I think they'll be able to move the ball.
If they would announce Brian Hoyer was the starter and they were 7-point underdogs, I might actually bet the Raiders to win the game. I do. By the way, I do want to. That's something I wanted to mention. I've been posting my bets this year. Right now, I'm 32 and 15 on my bets on the season. So I've really been doing really, really well. A lot of it's over unders, but it's gone really, really well so far. So I'm starting to just throw 100 on every game that I have bet. Although I had Atlanta to cover 4.5 today because I was able to get it 4.5, and it was looking really bad. But now Atlanta's at least back in the game.
Let me tell you, the back door is wide open.
The back door is wide open, exactly, just like I like it. I want the back door covers all the time. I don't even care about what happens in the actual game. Just give me the back door covers.
Yep.
All right. Anything else, Rhodey, before we sort of wrap things up here?
Yeah, I mean, I don't got anything that more. So we talked a lot of stuff real quick today, and it was really a good show. I think getting you guys all the right picks that we want to play today. So.
Yep. Have you recovered from your Packers getting smoked the other night?
Yeah, I get a lot of crap for that.
You're in
You
the
know,
wrong
the
place for it.
Lions are. I live in Michigan, and I'm a Packers fan, so the Lions that one hurts for a while a lot. So, yeah, they look terrible. You know, so it's what it is. Lions are going to be a good team, I think, this year. So,
Yeah. Yeah, the Lions are absolutely no joke. That team is loaded with talent. I actually was amazed that Green Bay looked like they might have a chance to come back there for a little bit.
I was getting excited, and then it's just kind of like we couldn't do anything. So I was
No,
like,
that defensive line though for the Lions was just killing them. I mean, that was brutal.
yeah, it was brutal. It was hard to watch that.
Keith, anything else you want to touch on before we get out of here?
Nah, I'm good.
All right, so Brody, take us out.
All right, guys. As always, good luck today, everyone, and hope you have an amazing DFS Sunday. And as always, let's get it.
Let's get it.